afternoon, everyone. We're so glad that you could join us today. My name is Katie Erickson. I'm the Marketing Director here at Boyer and Associates. We're just about ready to kick off today's webinar, all about moving your nonprofit to the Microsoft Cloud with Business Central. Before we get started, though, I do have a few housekeeping tips for you. First of all, yes, you are muted, but if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and put those either in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be kind of monitoring them throughout the session and answering them as best that we are able. And yes, if you've noticed, we are recording the session. So you'll usually get that copy of the recording directly from Teams, most likely tomorrow morning. Today's presenter is Sue Locksmead. She's been working with Microsoft ERP solutions for about 20 years now and kind of does specialize in this nonprofit arena as well. She's very passionate about helping our clients transform their businesses, specifically with those transitions to the cloud. And if you've noticed, we also have our nonprofit business development director, Kara Franklin, on the line. She's just going to be here monitoring the chat to help answer any of those questions that you have. And then you're also going to get a follow-up email from her in a week or so, just in case you have additional questions after the fact or want to follow up with her. And with that, let's get started. Sue, I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Katie. Our agenda for today is we're going to do a little bit of an overview on Boyer and who we are. We're going to talk about the current state of the Dynamics on-prem products, the SL, GP, and NAV. We're going to go through the migration process and talk about how to migrate your data from these systems into BC. We're going to talk about how BC compares to the on-prem solutions, talk about an access to a free migration assessment that Boyer can provide, and then we'll get into the demonstration. I'm going to quickly go through the slides so we can go ahead and get to the demonstration, the meat of the product. So let's go ahead and get going here. Just a little bit about Boyer. We are based out of Minneapolis. Our headquarters is based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We've been in business for 30 years. Always been part of implementation of Microsoft solutions. So we don't implement anything else, just Microsoft solutions. And we work with our clients to help them become more efficient as we do our implementations. Go ahead. So we have consultants across the United States. So not everybody is based out of Minnesota. We have over 450 active clients nationwide. We are the top 5% partner when it comes to migrating clients to the cloud. And one of every 5 of our clients is a nonprofit. And what we're most proud of is last year 2023, we won the Microsoft US Partner of the Year Award. So pretty proud of that. All right. What makes us different? What makes us different is that we are 100% focused on Microsoft. We don't implement other solutions. Everything's Microsoft based. We are Business Central experts. Some of our consultants have come from Nav World, which was the product before Business Central was based off of. But most of us have been working with the Business Central product that when it was released to the cloud since 2017, I think was our release date. So it's 2018, I should say. So about 6 years. We are specialists in migration. We've done a number of migrations, moving people from their on-prem systems to the cloud systems. We also know the integrations really well, and some of how it tightly integrates with Excel and CRM. And then we also have a managed service group, which is can do what we call like a quick start or a fast implementation. And that team also offers a number of tiered support plans. What we're finding in people implementing Business Central today is that, phase 1 is typically let's get it up and running with the basics of what we can do today. And there's usually phase 2 and phase 3 projects, and that tiered support, the ability to have a consultant still work with you on implementing future phases is really a benefit. Okay, let's go ahead. Go to the next slide. So what's the current state of SL, GP, and NAV? Overall, let's start with SL. So SL 2018 is the last version that was released from Microsoft. And the current state is that it's no longer in mainstream support through Microsoft. So Microsoft, what that means is that extended support is available, which means you will get security patches, but you won't get any new enhancements. So that so you should be on to at least get the security patches and any fixes that may need to be released. You want to be on the most current version of be on SL 2018, and that extended support ends July of 2028. I'll go through the rest of these. The GP version 2018 R2 is the most recent version. It has extended support through at least January 2028. And what does that mean? You get your bug fixes, you get your tax updates, you get patches. And so depending on the version of GP, if you're on an older version of GP, it does change. Like version 20, as the older versions have earlier extended support dates. So they're not extended through January 2028. So you probably, if you're going to stay on it, you might want to need to get updated so you can at least be supported through January 2028. There's no new customer sales after April 2026, so no more GP customer sales. And there's no new perpetual licenses, which was the model that used to buy the module out front and pay for it. You can buy subscription-based licensings. Only subscription-based licensings will be sold. And then NAV, both NAV 2015 through 2018 are all under extended support. Which will end January 2028. So basically overall, what Microsoft considers no mainstream support means that they're not doing new enhancements, they're not doing new releases, they're just extending fixes, all under the extended support plan. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the next slide. So how do you know it's time to move? I think based on the last slide, I would say that if you haven't thought about moving, you should think about moving. If you're on, I would say at least from the SL perspective, SL, I'm thinking you should start planning. But there are other reasons why you would move to the cloud. And from one standpoint is we're seeing, like, even if you're on a different system and you could stay on it for a long time and it's currently supported, you still gain benefit by maybe you can eliminate some of your manual processes. So I'm going to point out a couple. So siloed systems, I mean, that really means is that you have multiple systems where people are entering data in, they don't talk to each other, they don't integrate with each other. So what you'll see with, cloud-based platform like Business Central, you can connect those siloed systems. Duplicate data entry, that kind of goes along with the siloed system. The manual processes, this is a really big one. And I guess the example I'd give here is the whole AP approval process in many organizations is very manual. Some have automated it using emails, but some has gone to, you hand the AP invoice to a department head, they review it, they signature it, they hand it back to an AP person, he or she rekeys it into the accounting system to pay the bills. The approvals all like paper-based. And so those kind of processes definitely can be automated through Business Central. The insufficient reporting is the other big one. When you're doing most of your reporting in Excel and rekeying it in, or even just exporting out and maybe changing things and manipulating it, it's time to make a change. When people tell me I have these giant spreadsheets that manage a certain portion of the business, or I produce all my financials through Excel spreadsheets, it's time to improve upon that. And by moving to Business Central, the cloud, you should be able to improve these processes. Let me go ahead. And then the last one here, I just should touch on just the audit trails and the ability to, track and be secure. Those are also good reasons why you would want to move. So migration process. So Microsoft offers a cloud migration tool for both NAV and GP. There are certain parameters to be able to use the tool. Most of them are related to being on specific versions of SQL and specific versions of NAV or GP. So I just have outlined here that you need to be on SQL Server 26 or later. For NAV, you need to move to what's called move from NAV to BC on-prem version 23. Then you can move to BC Cloud using the migration tool. And this is all, these versions are all related to the migration tool. And then for GP20, you have to be on GP 2015 or later to use the migration tool. So what does the tool do? It basically converts your data. It connects to your database, your current GP or NAV database, and it converts over master files. It converts over historical transactions. And it can migrate, but it migrates as is. So a lot of people, when they go to Business Central, they start to reevaluate, how do I take advantage of the system and what's the best use of it? And sometimes migrating as is, some people decide that that's just not the right route to go. So there's alternatives. There's the traditional migration, which is, one thing that can be done is you can take, and we've developed SQL scripts that can pull the data out of these systems and then be able to push and import the data into BC. What's nice about the SQL scripting is it pulls it into Excel tables. And then what you can do is you still have a chance to manipulate if you want to. So you still have an opportunity to make changes. So it gives some flexibility there. But the migration tool. So export and import is definitely, been the traditional migration process. And so this should be evaluated to see what's best for your organization. But either way is doable and workable. It's just, working together to figure out what's the best path and what's the best migration process for you. All right. So why BC? Why the solution? So when we say it's pure cloud, you are literally in a browser launching BC. You could be on your phone, you can be on a tablet, you can be on any device that is browser based. It's some people will say they're in the cloud, and it's more of like a hosted environment where I can only access it from my computer because I've got to log into a VPN or whatever. So that's that. This is truly cloud. I'm launching an internet address, and it's bringing me into Business Central. It has flexibility to modify the screens. So when I say modify the screens, move fields around, hide fields, add fields, and so that's called personalization, and that's at the user's hands, or it could be based on a role based personalization. The system includes unlimited companies. So part of your environment is a production environment. You can have as many companies as you need. It's all part of the standard licensing. And you also get 3 sandboxes included. And the 3 sandboxes are really other environments that can be used for, if you needed to do development and testing, or you needed to test an integration before you roll it out. It's a place to do things before you roll out to production, making sure everything works properly. So that's included as part of your licensing. The integration, when you see how integrated it is with Excel and Power BI and Power Apps and Power Automate, you'll see there's just huge benefits and efficiencies gained there. And then a really big thing for IT groups is there's no servers for you to maintain. There's no client installs. You get your URL address and the user can get in. There's no upgrades. The upgrades are handled through Microsoft on an annual, twice a year. There's upgrades released and no backups to maintain. So those are part of the cloud solution benefit of Business Central. How does this compare? How does it compare to the other on-prem products? You should have the licensing fee is a lower cost, and there's a significant discount for nonprofits. There's probably discounts for nonprofits on the SLGP and NAV, and the discounts though also apply to Business Central, but the licensing fee is a lot less expensive. Your reduction in cost on hardware, server maintenance, Other IT services, IT no longer has to do upgrades, and we don't have to buy more hardware. So you reduce costs in those areas. The tight integration I talked about a little bit with Power BI, et cetera. And then single sign-on. So your login to Business Central is your Microsoft login. So when you're logged into your computer and you go to log in, you go to launch my Business Central, it just knows who you are. The licensing is assigned through the M365 portal. So your IT people sign you a license. When they sign you a license for Outlook and Excel, and basically you're ready to go. Um, I will show AI with Copilot a little bit. So the artificial intelligence with Microsoft's Copilot is built into BC, and it's enhancing your efficiency. And so I'll show some places where that applies. Automated integrations through APIs, and so out of the box, you receive APIs or web services that basically are allowing you to talk to other systems to pull or push data back and forth. So versus a file download upload, this is automatically like pulling or pushing data through the API. Um, and then the ISV solutions, so the software vendors that provide additional add-ons to Microsoft. There are some great products that work directly with, just like in the GPA and the SL world, there were third-party vendors. Microsoft's ISV solutions are also available through an app store, and you can go ahead and install or search for other enhancements that you may need. And then you always stay current, and new features are released twice a year. And those are major new features. And you will see the commitment from Microsoft to continue. Even though there's twice a year we get major enhancements, they're rolled out and as it's April and October timeframe. And you just see the Microsoft commitment to the product, and they're continuing to commit to increasing functionality, adding more and more functionality. All right. So this is a little bit repeating what I said. You can access Business Central anywhere from a desktop, tablet, anywhere that you have a browser. Boyer will offer a free migration assessment to kind of help you through that process of, looking at what you have today, some of your high level processes, looking at what functions and modules you use today, looking to see if you have any customizations, more of a technical review too of your database. And there's tools that we can run to look at the data to make sure it's ready if we want to use that migration tool. But after the analysis, we can then go talk and discuss an approach, a recommended approach. So examples of recommended approaches of this is migration tool is perfect for you guys. It'll work well. We would just do a full, migration from your existing companies. Another would be a hybrid approach where we would, say, well, let's migrate, but then let's reconfigure X, Y, and Z and set other things up to take advantage of some new functionality. And then the last option of re-implementation, which is good. You really are moving into a brand new system. So re-implementation to take advantage of configuring it differently. Maybe you're making changes to your chart of accounts. Maybe you're making changes to what we call dimensions, which would be segments on your chart of accounts. This is your opportunity. Let's make the changes and re-implement. So those are different approaches, but Carol will be following up, and we would be happy to do a migration assessment for anybody that's on the call. All right. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the live demo. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my PowerPoint. And I'm going to stop presenting, and then let me go ahead and share out and make sure I'm getting over here, and let's go ahead. All right, everybody. Okay, so I'm in Business Central now. This is my homepage. I launched Business Central through my web browser. I have all my favorites saved, and I just basically clicked on it and launched Business Central. This is our test environment. This is the homepage. Couple things that you'll note over here is the waffle that has all my other Microsoft apps, so I can quickly open up another app. So definitely just considered another Business Central, another app from Microsoft. Over on the top right here, companies, these are all my available companies. You can have unlimited companies set up in your production environment. And below, if I had any sandboxes, I would see those environments too. I can quickly switch over to a different company or sandbox very easily. If I wanted to go, let's say I want to go to my Boyer Associates company, I can either just hit switch, or I could switch and open in a new tab. So that way I can keep working in my nonprofit company and I can work in my Boyer Associates company. You'll see that I have two companies open at the same time. I've got two tabs up here. So you just got your companies. Here's a Copilot. This is the overall Copilot functionality. I can do things like find or explain to me. Let's do a little explain to me. So I can say, help me understand how intercompany works in Business Central. And it'll go out and it'll do a little working on it, and eventually it will come back with something around, overall understanding of intercompany. And that's one example. Another example, so basically it's saying Business Central Intercompany allows you to do certain, treat interdivisional transactions as normal. So it goes through and gives you some background on intercompany. I could ask it, what is the balance on my GL account donations? And it could come back and let's do what is the GL account balance for donation revenue? I will see how well this one works. I've been practicing this one and I've had it. So it's getting the information, and this time looking up some records. Almost done. And it does come back, and it's got to drill back into the general ledger entries. I'm not going to drill back into it, but it does come back and help prompt you. So there's just an example of the overall Copilot. I'll show you a couple other places where I find it even a little more help. This is helpful, but there are other places that through bank rec is really kind of exciting, where it helps with the bank rec. The search button up here is an overall search to find something that may be not on my menu. So let me close out Copilot, and I could do an overall search, and maybe I want to find the payment method table, and I start typing in and I find it, and I can just click on it and open it. So this is an overall search used when you don't have it maybe on your menuing readily available. And then you also have the whole help section. And just so you know, Microsoft Learn Channel has all kinds of videos and training material available to learn all areas of BC. So there's definitely multiple resources available for learning the product. And over here is just who I'm logged in as. And so this is my Microsoft login, and this is I'm logged into my app under my Microsoft login. Menuing from here, typically I'm logged in as a business manager, and business manager is my role, and that kind of just what I see is based on I'm a business manager role. So as a business manager, it's let me see the finance area, and let me see the cash management area, and the sales area, and the purchasing area. So each one of these has another drop down, and I'll be using that as I go through the demonstration, but I'm just going to, and then I can collapse or expand that. I also have bookmarked certain things that I do all the time. So like this vendor general ledger entries, I like to go into that all the time. And so it wasn't bookmarked. I searched for it, I found it. And then what I did was I clicked on this little book here to bookmark it. So it's always on my menu. So that's how I get everything on my menu that I commonly want to do. I have some action buttons down here, quick actions to do, let's say a sales invoice or a purchase order or a purchase invoice. As part of your licensing, you do get all modules. The licensing is based on a per user license. And so it's a one license fee for all modules. You may not use quite a bit of them. You may not use purchase order, but you are licensed for it for that phase 2 project. You might. Down here, I've got a couple of queues for any requests that I sent for approval and any requests to approve. And I'll show you that in a little bit. Below that, Power BI, you are able to build reports in Power BI with Business Central. I'm going to refresh this report. I put a Power BI report that we built, but I'm going to go ahead and expand it because it's kind of tight on my display. So I can go ahead and expand it. And users can have Power BI dashboards available. This is kind of like a dashboard, and this was actually a nonprofit. I'm going to change the date. My data is a little old, so I'm just going to do the last 3 years. But this is dashboard. Basically, this kind of dashboard can be set up for users to be able to access, information. This happens to be financial. So this is a statement of functional expenses comparing year 21 to 22. My data is a little old, so that's why it's those 2 years. But you can see quick rundown of all my expenses each year. I've got a budget, I've got your actual, I've got the expense variance and percentages, and then I've got some month-to-date comparisons down here. And this is like a full dashboard, but this is the extent of example of what you can do with Power BI and Business Central. And the other part about Power BI is that not only can I pull data from Business Central, I can pull data from Business Central and other systems. And so you can then mirror reporting, not mirror, but you can basically pull reporting in from multiple systems to display KPIs, dashboards, reporting that people may use. And then that can be launched right from their Business Central homepage. So that was a little bit on the Power BI. And yeah, we did a whole set of nonprofit serious financial based reporting, and that's what I got launched here. All right, let's talk about lists. So when I open up let's just say I'm going to open up the chart of accounts. It puts me in a list mode. From the list mode, I can search. Let's say I wanted to search for donation. I could scroll up and down and find it, but it finds any close match to, I just typed in DONATIO and it found donation revenue. I can open up, this is the chart of accounts list. When I open up this account 4010, it puts me in the card mode. So this is more detail around a chart of accounts. When I create a new account, I'm going to be in the card mode, filling in the basic revenue for basic data for a new account. I also have, see, I've got some little notes available that I could put. You'll see notes available on windows, like card windows like this. Account is used for donations. And then I can go ahead and click OK. And you'll see these notes will become displayable. And you'll see who made the note. And so the next person can come in and make a note, and it'll just continue, and you'll be able to see a display of notes. I'm going to go ahead and this list mode, I'm going to go back and remove the donation, and let's take a look at everything. All right, I'm going to go through and I'm going to go to another area where the list mode is a little more, I could show some meaningful things. So I'm going to look at the general ledger entries list. Now this list is a list of all my GL entries. You can see across the top, I've got the date and I've got an account and I've got description and amount. And so I also had it right now filtered. So I can filter on any data. So let me just clear out these filters and just show you how I filtered it. I said, you know what, let me filter on GL account, and I could resort in ascending and descending order, but I'm just going to filter to this value, and GL account 4010. And then I'm going to do a date filter. Let's say I wanted to look at all the donation revenue for 2024. So I'll go ahead and we'll do a filter on post date, and we'll do 0101 to 1231. I'll just leave it out there because I'm going to save this filter. I could save this filter. I can call it, and I'm going to save as, and I'm going to call it donation revenue 2024. So when I go out of here, back to my main menu, I open up GL entries. I now have that saved filter, and I could just click on it. So I'm all saved. So you've got ascending, descending on pretty much any header field. You've got filter to a value filter. You've got your filter list over here and your saved filter list. I can go ahead. This little share button here has a number of options, and one of them is just open in Excel. So that's a pretty straightforward open in Excel. You'll see when I open it up, it will have, it's just a list of the entries that I filtered on. I'll enable editing. And it's in a nice table format. And so you can do what you want with it. It's just a push of the data to Excel. And that open in Excel feature, I'm going to go ahead, the little arrow, that is available almost in any window that like a list mode, you'll see that available. A list of, let's say, open invoices, a list of purchase orders, whatever lists you made, a list of customers, a list of the GL accounts. You'll see this little share button is what we call it. The edit in Excel is a little more robust. Or I said a lot more robust. This lets me put data back into BC. So the example I'm going to use is I'm going to say that our GL budgets that we loaded were wrong. I'm going to go to budget entries because that's the list of all my budget. So this is all my budget entries. And what happened was somebody keyed in 1.5 million and it was only supposed to be 150,000. They keyed in too many zeros and I need to correct these. There's a bunch of them I want to correct. But the budget got input wrong. And so I'm going to correct that using edit in Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do edit in Excel. And we're going to open up the file. And you'll see I'm going to enable editing, and you'll see on the right-hand side the connector. So the little connector, it's reading, it's checking who I am. So it's checking my licensing and making sure that I have the rights to be able to go in and do anything here. And it pulls my data in. And so if we go take a look at this, I'm going to go over to the section over here. We're going to go over to the right and we're going to get the amount field. There's my amounts and there's that number that's wrong. And I'm going to remove a 0 and then I'm going to copy that down and fix all of them. So let's fix all of them because they're all wrong. And then I'm going to publish it back, which means that I'm pushing it back to make that correction. So now I've got that should be published back. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually close this out. I'm not going to save it. I don't need to save it. I'm going to go back over to BC. And I do need to refresh my screen here. So let me just bear with me. I'll just go back to the main menu and I'll go back into GL budget entries. And you'll see now I'm at 150,000. So it's all corrected, ready to go. So really nice, powerful integration to let you load data. Journal entries could be a way to use the journal entries, load master data when we use it a lot to build out, pulling in new vendors, setting up the system. But definitely a tighter interface than we've ever seen, that any of the other products that the on-prem products would have. All right. So that's your filtering, your list views. One other thing, when I point out, let me go back. I'll go to chart of accounts just because we're going to go there next anyhow and talk about that. There's a share to teams button. I'm not going to run it, but basically I could share to teams and this would put a link out there to the chart of accounts and it would post it in Teams if you're using Teams. And then if you're not using Teams, there's always the copy link. So it just copy a link and then paste it into an email or whatever you may want to do and send that out to give somebody a link back to something you want them to look at in BC. All right. I'm just looking at my notes here just to make sure. Okay. So I'm in the chart of accounts and I want to talk through this a little bit and kind of talk about differences. So your chart of accounts is just if you compare it to GP or SL, it's just your main account. You'll see very clearly down below what I have is donation revenues 4010. And so in addition to the chart of accounts, you also have what's called dimensions. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring up. So when I process a transaction, I am going to put the account number in, but I'm also going to put some dimension values in. So what are dimensions or examples of dimensions? They would be your other segments if you're comparing this to SL or GP. So in the non-for-profit world, examples of some good dimensions or dimensions you may have is a fund dimension. You may have a functional expense dimension. You may have a grant dimension. You can have as many dimensions that you need. Typically, beyond 8, it may be a little bit not manageable. So typically I've seen 4 or 5. But let's just start with, what behind the functional dimension is what's called dimension values. And so you'll see for our company here, we've got 3 functional expenses. We've got admin, we've got fundraising, and we got program services. So when I record a transaction, I can say, okay, this particular rent expense is for rent expense GL account. And I am going to put this under the administration functional expense. So I code transactions to an account and to dimension values. There can be rules around dimensions. I can say that a functional expense is required in every GL count, and I never can skip it. Or I can say a functional expense is required on just all the GL expense accounts and never skip it. So the rules will help with the integrity of the data to make sure people are processing transactions and not skipping things. The other thing is the dimensions can default. So for example, if the rent account always goes to administration and never gets coded to the fundraising or programs, then I can say for on the rent GL account, I can say dimension default administration for functional expense, and it'll fill in on any transaction and I don't have to key it in. So I've got a functional expense, I've got a fund. So we set up some funds and my fund values, I made them restricted and then unrestricted, but I have multiple restricted funds. And so I wanted to set all of them up and I just have one unrestricted fund. I'll be able to do reporting on restricted. You'll see how it's coded and the words restricted. You can do, when you see how you can do filtering, R0010 through R0090 actually would give me the total of restricted, or I'm sorry, I missed 100. R0100 would give me a total. So I can do filtering where I can just say, okay, pull all the restricted or pull just the unrestricted. So I've got a fund, I got a functional expense, and then I decided, in addition to I still do need some programs and some grants. I want to track that or projects, some grants. So I set up. So this is another example of now in this dimension, this grant project, I have both. And I don't only want to set up one dimension, but I can do, we can do roll-ups, let's say. So if you look at this example, I have grants, and then federal grant ABC is G110, state grant IL is G120. When I post transactions, I'll put them to the 110 or 120, but I have the ability then to do a roll-up of all grants, or I could do a roll up of all projects. So you'll see that projects, I've got a total, and this little formula here says add G100 to G999. So I can get a grant total and I could just pull the grant total and just look at just the totals. And then I do all projects totals. So dimensions can have hierarchy and they can have roll-ups and be able to filter. I probably could have done the same thing. I could have done that on the fund if I wanted to. So this dimension value, I probably could have done a restricted fund total, and then I could just pull that. I'd probably call it R0999 or something. And then unrestricted is all by itself. So I don't need a total there. So let's see how that works together. So if I go back and we're going to do a journal entry. So journal entries are done through general journals. And I have batches. So BC's batch oriented. You'll put transactions in batches and you post your batches once you know the transaction's right. So for a general journal, I'll pull up my default journal. I've got a pretty simple journal entry here. So I've got a date. I've got a document number. The system assigned it because I have a batch that has set to assign journal entries, document numbers. It's going to GL count 6040, which happens to be consulting fund code. So here's where the dimensions get tagged, right? So I've got count, I've got my fund code, I've got my grant project code, I've got my journal entry description. I probably should have said something like accrue consulting expense. I've got my debit for 1,500, and then let me repeat this. I'm just copying that down so I can don't have to key it in again. I've got my journal. Right now, over here in the status, I've got an imposed restriction because I turned on journal entry approval workflow. So I need to send this for approval. I won't go through that process because I'll come back to it. I definitely will cover it. I'll come back to it, but I just want to cover a couple other things besides journal entries because I want to talk a little bit about just two things. Statistical accounts, because this relates to journal entries. So I can have statistical accounts. And so I can have this statistical count is an example of I'm keeping track of employee counts per functional expense. So I have 12 people that are in the fundraising group. I have 61 people in programs, and I have 20 people in administration. This statistical count can be used for allocations, and I'll get to that next. And it can be used for putting them on a financial report. So it's an account. You can have as many statistical accounts as you need. This is just one example. So the way it works with an allocation is there's what's called allocation accounts. And I set up two allocations. Those that came from the GP world, this allocations definitely got added to Business Central because of the GP world. So if there was functionality that wasn't in BC and needed to be because it wasn't one of the other products, it is added in now. It wasn't added in the first version, but it got added recently. And you'll see more and more of that. I've seen most of the GP functionality should be in BC today. I used to have a whole list of what was missing, and I haven't looked at it in a long time, but most of it's been moved over. But I just want to talk about, so fixed allocation is pretty simple. And this fixed allocation basically is saying, I want to allocate rent to 6120, which is the rent account, but I put the dimension on it. So it's going to administration for 40%. It's going to fundraising for 50%, and it's going into program services for 10%. So when I use this allocation account on a journal entry, it's going to split it out at a fixed rate because I define the fixed rate. Variable, much more powerful. So what I'm doing at variable is I'm splitting out the rent, but I'm splitting it out based on the functional expense filter. Let me see if I can make this a little wider so we can see it. I'll make this one a little shorter. All right. So this first one says the destination is rent, 6120, and break it down based on the employee count. And based it down based on the employee count, balance, and date. So whatever the balance is in the employee count, look at the admin functional expense and take it and calculate based on total employee count, what percent is admin, what percent is fundraising, and that's how it calculates the percentage based on the percent of the employee count in the whole grouping. So I could do a test allocation just to kind of show that. And so based on $1,000 amount, it's putting $215 into our administrative group because it had 20 employees, and there were 12 employees in the next group, and then it's 129, and then the last group was 61 employees, and so that allocation got most of the allocation. So I want to point that out. I want to point out also, since I'm pointing out statistical counts allocations, I kind of pointed out the budget entries, but BC has budgeting, where let's go ahead and go to GL budget instead of the entries because it's a higher level picture. I can budget with an account and dimensions. So I'm doing budgeting at the fund and functional expense level. I'm going to open up the budget. This is a different view of the budget. This is the view of it by account. I can go ahead and I loaded this by exporting out. So it's very similar to the GP world, export out into Excel, update it and import it in. It could also be imported in through budget entries like I did, but this way builds the budget entries. So I could drill into it. So let's just take a look at this program revenue and drill into it. I can see what it's made up of. I see it looks like I got a budget per period. Oh, that was my 150,000. You can see I budgeted to a specific, all unrestricted, and I budgeted it all to the functional expense programs. So budgets then, you can then, I could copy budget, I can create new budgets, I can have as many budgets as I need. Budgets then will be able to be reflected on the financial reports. All right. So now we're back to journal entries. I want to kind of cover on the journal entry side. Let's go ahead, go back to finance. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to cover a couple things on journal entries. You know, that first one that I put in, the default one, I just keyed it in. I can copy paste journal entries in. I know a lot of people like copy paste and use them. I know they use them in GP. Let's just see, I've got a format all set up. I actually created this format. Let me just kind of show you. So I made my screen as easy as possible. All the fields that I key in are over here on the left. So if I select both of these and hit Control C, I got 2 rows copied. basically I created my format by just pasting it in. Now I've got my format. And then what I do is I only need everything up to the dollar amount. So I just get rid of all the stuff to the right of it. If I support, there we go. And just delete all that because I don't need that in my format. And then, so now I've got my journal entry. I'll copy and paste this one. So I could just keep these in Excel. This is a journal. I could have hundreds of lines. I just copy and then I'll go ahead and go over and I'll go here and I can add it to this. So just to paste it here. Oops, and it just pastes in. Journal entries, you can see I've got multiple dates here. You can have multiple dates. They're as long as the entry number, document number, and date is in balance. So like on August 21st, I've got a debit and credit of 1,500 and this entry balance is on, and this is a different document number. When you're gonna, so I still got my post restriction, which means I haven't sent for approval. So I'm gonna now send for approval. And I'm sending this journal batch for approval. And it says it's been sent. Do you want to send another? No, I just want to send. Approval request this batch has already been sent. Oh, I already sent it. All right. I'm just going to refresh. Let's go ahead and look. Back to my homepage. I showed you I had these. This is the one that I sent. Now I have this set. This approval. This approval would get emailed over. It's Tom Hart, who's the approver. Since I don't have Tom here today, though, I'm going to delegate it back to me. I'm an administrator, so I could at least get through the whole approval process. So let's just delegate that over. And you can see I've got Tom's delegation going to me. So now I'm the approver. So if I'm the approver, I get to open up the record. I get to check it. I get to say, okay, does that look good? Not look good. There's still pending approval status. I'm going to go ahead. I can put some comments in and reject it. I can just reject it or I can approve. If I reject it, that means then I got to go back and then I'll go back, fix it, resubmit it again and go through the process again. I'm just going to approve though, just so we don't have a lot of time to do it. So it's been approved. So at this point, the user, whoever's doing the journal entries, they're able to go ahead and post if that's what their role is. I could have posted it too if I had the rights to do that. Let's go back in. We were working on the default batch and we are going to go ahead and under the post screen, go back to home and we're going to post and post. Once I post, that now is in my general ledger entries table and the batch is now empty, ready for whenever I want to use it again. And my last way to get journal entries in is not my last way, but another way is to import general journals. So I do have a file set up, pretty straightforward Excel file. It's nice and clean that I set up that I could load in a journal entry. And I'm just going to load in and we'll go ahead here. And you got 10 records created. There's my journal entry. I can have I had used this tool a week ago for 25,000 entries and I was able to import 25,000 entries in like 5 minutes. So it was amazing. And then you can go ahead and process it. And then so that's importing journal entries. Your new option is also to build an API that would integrate with another system to pull those in. ADP, a lot of the payroll systems are starting to offer that. So as they offer it, or they can be built if there's some system that, we need to build one with to be able to bring the data in, that could be done too. All right. So that's a quick overview of like the GL. I do want to point out, so Base BC has a financial report writer. Let's go ahead and go to the financial reporting. If you're familiar with Management Reporter, it is similar. It uses the same wording as rows and columns. I think it's simpler, partially because it's built into BC, and so it just follows the same. But if you look at the row layout, no, I don't want to make a copy. Okay, so this message, BC builds out a base set of rows and columns automatically based on your chart of account setup. So I do want to kind of point that out. So I'll open up the row. I'm just going to open up this row definition. because this is the M income row definition. Do I make a copy? No, I just want to see it. And you can see it's similar. You're defining what accounts are in each row. You're defining, some formatting, whether it's the sign is reversed and there's some formatting over here. You're doing some totals. There's some formulas. And so total income is coming from adding up these P001 to P004. These base set of reports, you can make copies of them. You can build your own. There's some functionality like insert from the GL counts to start building out your own row formats, rows and column formats. So you have your row, then you have your column format. And you can see, this particular column format was just an actual entries. These are entries, budget entries, and then a formula to do the net change. So I've got and then the rows and column definitions can also have dimensions, of course, dimensions. So let's just look at this one. So this is a quarterly statement of activities. I'm just going to go ahead and view that financial report. I've got some parameters here. I'm going to go ahead and make this I'm going to hide these columns up here. I can do some filtering. I can on the go, maybe filter on a specific fund or a group of funds. Maybe all I wanted to see was all the restricted, and I could do R000 ... R999, whatever that formula, that range would be. But I'm just going to leave it in total. This is a quarterly one, so we had a column layout printing out quarterly. What's nice about this is them looking at it. I've got drill back in here. So I'm right in BC. I'm drilling back. It's made up of the 4010 count, and then I can drill even more. And you can see that I can see the detail and what makes up that detail. And it's drilling right back into my general ledger entries table. I can go ahead and export it out and create an Excel template if I want. And so, yeah, and they've got, basic setup of, here's, I got a fund balance one. Let's just kind of view that. So I decided to run a report on the fund balances. I don't have a whole lot of data, it looks like, on my fund balances, but again, so you build them, you mix and match columns and rows, and you're then able to run financials. All right. I'm going to do a quick overview of cash management. The only thing I'm going to do on the quick cash management is cash management. Payment journals are money going out, paying vendors or primarily vendors, maybe employees also. Money coming in would be through either cash receipts, journal, or deposits. So you're recording your money going out, you're recording your money coming in, and then you're running your bank recs. So let me open up a bank account and just kind of point out a couple of things. So bank accounts, there is the ability to there's bank linking. I don't have any linking because I'm in a test environment, but linking is through bank linking can be established with some banks, not all banks, but some banks. If linking is able to be established, you're able to pull transactions in directly from the bank, and either for recording daily transactions or for doing bank rec purposes. But when the linking is available and works, we definitely want to turn that on, and definitely a lot of efficiency is gained. Worst case scenario, today we're going to do a bank rec, but our bank rec is going to be with a file import. So I've got the bank statement set up to do a file import. Payment export format, US EFT. So you can pay vendors electronically through BC. You set up the vendor and the vendor bank account information. You enable the your US EFT CCDs, the format that I'm creating, that NACHA file format that can be defined based on how your bank needs it. Some banks have not standard NACHA, but they have some changes and tweaks to it. And then Positive Pay is available too to export Positive Pay files. And these are just basically telling the system what the format of each one of these is. So I'm actually going to do a bank rec and do a little bit of bank rec and how Copilot is now embedded into bank rec. So let's go ahead and I'll go back to my cash management menu, and I'll go ahead and do on bank account reconciliations. And I've got this is my little Copilot button. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on reconcile using Copilot. I'm going to import in the transaction data through a file because I don't have linking, like I said. There's my bank file. This is all my bank statement transactions. This came from the bank and it's everything that cleared. and it comes in and it brings it in, and it goes ahead and pulls that in. I've got a little bit of delay here. I'm hoping I don't think I have the file open. Okay, pulls it in and looks at it and it says, okay, go ahead and let's generate that bank rec. And it pulls it in and it's trying to match. I thought it was trying to, so I don't know why I had, all right, so basically it's telling me base BC has an auto match, and it auto matched. I only had 6 records in there. So it auto matched 3 of the 6, and then Copilot matched the other 3. These are the ones Copilot matched. So it's taking my bank statement and matching it to what I have in BC. What's interesting is I will tell you that I have this bank deposit that came in for $1,000, but it's applied to multiple entries. So it was smart enough to know that that deposit, and it was a deposit, is I had 2 transactions in my bank ledger, the 650 and 350, but Copilot, Base BC couldn't do that before. Copilot helped to build that and find that. So Copilot found these entries were not found through Base BC. Copilot kicked in and helped them. And if I liked it, I'm just going to keep it. And then I want to open it now? Yes. So now I'm in my bank rec. Everything on the left is my bank statement transactions, and they're all matched to everything in my right. Now, obviously, I made this really, really simple because and so basically everything tied out. I'm all balanced. I do have some other features, and I won't go. I'm running short on time, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I'm going to, you can go ahead, and if there's something on the bank statement side that didn't get matched, I could post the difference to the GL. And so automatically create that GL transaction and tell it what GL account to go to, and start to memorize. Like if it's always a service charge, next month it'll memorize, oh, service charge, it should go to this GL account. So another nice little feature that got added recently with Copilot. So I would just finish that and post that reconciliation, and then I would be done. All right. I guess I could talk for maybe a few more minutes. Let's just talk about maybe vendors and pay. I'm going to talk about AP invoices just because I think it's important to. So purchase invoices is where AP invoices go into, and I'm just going to do new invoice. So what I wanted to point out is a couple things. I'll go ahead and pick a vendor, and I will make this quick. I'll put in the invoice number. I'll put in a GL account. Let's say it's some consulting expense. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in, I'm not going to fill in the fund code, but I should. But let me just, for example purposes, it's a $100 bill. I can add an attachment. So I could say, I'm the AP clerk. I'm going to add the attachment. I'm going to fill it out, and then I could send for approval. So let's send that for approval. That can go to approval. And then if it gets approved, the status would change to approved, like the journal entry did. Here's your statuses. And so I don't have it turned on, but I just want to point out, once it's approved, it gets posted, and you can go ahead and process the payment. And then the payment can be processed via check or via ACH, electronic filing. So either way. So and then that's, attach it and then go ahead and post it. So that's basic BC out of the box flow for AP. And then I'll just do a basic flow. The same side, the AR side is very similar. So customer invoices, I think I've got an invoice already out here. I've got an invoice. I can go ahead and I'm not going to post it. I've got it coded to GL account, fund, grant, etc. I'm going to post it. So once you process an invoice, it becomes a posted invoice. You can auto email. So we can go ahead and print and send and email it out to, I didn't have it set up for emailing, but email it out. Let me see if this one's set up. Yes. Okay, let's do this. No, I don't have it set up. Apologize. But I can email it out automatically. I can email out groups of invoices automatically. And then from there, I can send out statements, and statements can be automated to send out at a certain time frame that can be scheduled, and process the cash receipt from there. So that's kind of a rundown on the AR side. And I think that's pretty much we're out of time, but we've kind of covered, I think, everything that I had, just at a higher level on some things. Thank you for attending. We appreciate it. Carol will be following up, but that is the end of our demonstration for today.